Hi, my name is Alison McCormick. I'm a parent or adoptive parent of 3 young people with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I live in the UK and we adopted 3 different children from 3 different agencies from London, all who are siblings, the same mother, with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I'd like to just say a few words for Charles's conference, a little bit about what happens in our life and how really frustrating and angry it is to try and get services for children and even worse for young people and adults in the UK. Just to explain a bit about myself, I have 3 adopted siblings with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and none of them had a diagnosis before placement. All of these were strictly denied, and it wasn't until they were adopted legally that we managed to get a diagnosis for them. The agencies refused to accept that they had any traces whatsoever of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. We've now spent 13 years of fighting for services. We've had meetings upon meetings upon meetings trying to get help for these children, and nobody wants to know. Just to say that it's not all the social services and mental health and health's fault. It's the systems that are in place that actually fail to help children like ours. They don't tick their boxes. It's very, very difficult and very frustrating as parents and carers to try to help our children, who obviously we love very much and want the best for them. Never once have I been in a meeting for support and came out feeling that I've actually been helped. I've been labelled, or my husband and I have both been labelled as having mental health problems, which is the furthest from the truth. We've been labelled as neglectful parents, and we've had all sorts of things labelled for us. I've got a fabrication disorder, and there's no evidence whatsoever for these claims. And all these issues are actually written on our files, which are obviously very hurtful and very makes us angry that these things have been said about us by people, professionals, who are supposed to be there to support our children and families, but due to their complete lack of understanding of FASD, they want to look for an easy way out and blame the parents. And the lack of understanding of the complexities that our children face just doesn't happen in social services and other health services. They don't understand. And the fact that these children have a disability and that they have severe brain damage that is irreparable, and obviously with support can make their lives much better. But it's very, very difficult trying to get people to understand, and even if they do understand, actually have a system that's in place to help these children. We get really frustrated. Today, I am so angry, I could scream, I could bang a wall. I am just so angry, and I have days like this where I despair. But when you had 13 years of caring for 3 very, very complex young people and then have an agency that completely fail you, words fail me. I get really cross. Now our eldest child is approaching adulthood. You've seen Jade already speaking earlier, and we're facing even worse systems to tackle than we had as a child, even though the children's services were set up for children with disabilities. They weren't set up for children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. My argument is, how can a child with a diagnosis of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder who receives a high rate of disability living allowance and has a full day completely supported in school after so many fights and arguments for it, 32 and a half hours of an educational statement for nearly all of her childhood, and be on antipsychotic medication and be under the children's disability team for nearly 8 years, be told that now she's 17, she's not eligible for adult services via social care or mental health. Apparently, because miraculously at 17, she now has no brain damage. The mental health services have been assessing her medication for 8 years and now won't be doing so, even though it is vital that she has to manage these medications, because obviously they can impact on her body, and without them she cannot manage her everyday life. The world has gone crazy. Now, due to the extreme caring pressures of our 3 children, I have endured really profound health problems, physical health problems, and so's my husband had other issues, and our health has crashed, and I've been in hospital now 5 times this year in the last 6 months because my immune system just cannot cope with the pressure that we've been put upon and the pressure that we have every day, not just for our children. They're easy compared with fighting for services that don't exist. Both of us have had to give up our careers. As I say, I'm a qualified social worker, postgraduate, and I had to give our children the care that they needed, which to us was far more important than money, which has had huge implications financially, emotionally. We can be quite sidelined and quite lonely, and also there's no money in the pot, whereas before I had a very good career and so did my husband. He was a chemist and we had money which we could go and do things with the children, and now we live on benefits, which is absolutely shocking to have to live on a benefit just because we need to give services to our children that aren't there for the children who we've taken out the care system and were promised to support, and we've had nothing. Only seen as moaning people and complainers because we dare say, you've promised this is what we need, and you're not interested. So unfortunately we've now been labelled as serial complainers, etc. And that is furthest from the truth. We just want the best for our children, like you and I and anyone else in this world would want. Now, we have 2 other children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder as well, and they actually receive some respite funding money, which means that we can employ people to look after our children for short breaks, which means that my husband and I can at last get some time together, which is very rare. The issue is, now our eldest one doesn't qualify for that. That means that we're expected to leave her at home, where she's like a 6-year-old emotionally, and there's no way that she'll be able to look after herself or keep herself safe. So we either take her with us, which defeats the object, or we leave her at home, which she can't do. So, nobody really thinks through the impact of having 3 children with very complex learning disabilities and social care skills, and nobody really cares. It's so annoying. They are the most vulnerable and complex children to care for. So now my eldest one, who's 17, has been assessed as actually not even requiring services at all, because apparently now she's 17, adoption must cure her disability, and being 18 must suddenly stop you needing support services, because she used to be under the Children's Disabled team, and now she's not deemed to be needing anything. So how can that suddenly get to a certain age and be cured? I just don't know. So suddenly a very vulnerable, highly vulnerable young person has gone from needing disabled services to being deemed suitable for independent living, even though she has the emotional age of a 6-year-old. I just get so angry with this. I'm still angry now after reading today that it arrived, and it actually said on the document that Jay doesn't have any brain issues or brain damage. She has no issues whatsoever, so she doesn't require services. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is organic brain damage. It's permanent. Anyone thinking it's not otherwise and they're going to outgrow it needs to get a crash course in awareness of this dreadful condition that is for life and preventable. So we're approaching 18, and means that suddenly Jade is even more vulnerable than ever before. If I was to leave a child who is 6 or 7 and neglect them like the services here are now, I would be arrested. I would be charged with neglect. So why are the agencies now allowed to do this with children who have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? It's not the social worker's fault who assessed her, but the system is set up to fail. It actually refuses to accept that just because Jade can say she knows answers doesn't really mean she can do it. So you have a young person who can say all the right things, but there is no way on earth can she carry them out. But they are indiscriminately discriminating her and quite happily doing so, knowing that she has issues, knowing that she is so vulnerable and there's nothing that they can do about it. Well, I have to say, shame on the UK, shame on the world for all these children born with this preventable disability, and shame that systems and support are not in place. And as a young adult, she's now going to be expected to walk outside and manage herself without any support whatsoever. And that can't happen. This young person is extremely vulnerable. I'm not going to go into all the things that she's done. It would take a book to tell you all the terrible things that this poor young person has been through in her life and how vulnerable she is. And without my husband and I being in her life, she'd have been dead long, long ago. So we took her out of the care system. That's great. But what's the care system done for children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? One word: nothing. Please watch this. Please understand and put services in for these young people who are going to be out tomorrow. We don't want them in prison. We don't want them on the streets. They just deserve a life like everybody else. It's not their fault. They've been born with this. Thank you very much. And I really hope this hits home, because if it doesn't, you are going to be in a crisis. Even more than you are now, because these kids coming through the system are all going to be adults, just like mine who's 17, and they'll all be denied it, just like mine. Thank you.